My name is Ben Ransom. I'm the Crime Prevention Officer here at the River Forest Police Department. Happy to bring you this meeting live on Zoom. Published slides and video recording will be made available after this presentation. And we will begin by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone can rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started with tonight's presentations, we will have a few words from our Chief of Police, Jim O'Shea.
Good evening, and just briefly, I want to move quickly through this introduction since we have some amazing guest speakers tonight. I do want to let you know, in this time where we're all searching for peace and less violence and caring for others, that the River Forest Police Department will continue to police the community with empathy, dignity, and respect. We will always look for ways to improve our services and even how we deliver those services to the community. One case in the courts that we're watching that came out this week that I just wanted to mention that could affect the way we police was a case out of Southern Illinois in which an Illinois judge, Judge T. Scott Webb, found that the firearm owner's identification card, which most of us have, is unconstitutional. And he stated, in short, requiring a FOID card was unconstitutional under the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution and to Article 1, Section 22 of the Illinois Constitution of 1970. This is the case that not only the River Forest Police Department will be monitoring, but every other law enforcement agency in the state of Illinois. One of the other points it kind of goes with what we're talking about is we need to stop the violence. For example, in Chicago this week, we're midway through the week. In Chicago, 7 shot, 36 wounded, which gives you a total of 43 shot, including 7 homicides. And just so you know how close to home some of this violence hits, is that the Austin district that we border, that we frequent, we already have 19 homicides for the year. As of April 27th, 19 homicides, 54 shot, with a total of 73 shooting and homicide incidents. It's unacceptable, whether it be the Austin district or throughout the city of Chicago. And we're hoping we can be part of the solution. At this time, I'm going to bring Officer Ransom back up so we can bring in our guest speakers this evening. We will be taking questions at the end of our meeting tonight. And we also want to let you know, so you stick around, we're going to be discussing some of the reform legislation that's going to become active as of July 1st of 2021. Thank you and good evening, and we're glad to have you here.
Thanks, Chief. Our first guest speaker tonight is Sergeant Baez from the Addison Police Department. Sergeant Baez has been with Addison PD for over 20 years. He has served in various areas of law enforcement, including field services, school resource officer, criminal investigations, field training officer, and much more. Sergeant Baez is one of the instructors for our 40-hour crisis intervention course that we send our officers to. In that course, he instructs police officers on how to respond to individuals with autism and other special needs. As April is Autism Awareness Month, we are pleased to have Sergeant Baez here as our guest speaker. And Sergeant Baez, we will turn it over to you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
I appreciate you having me as a guest speaker for your event tonight. Thank you very much. It is a privilege to speak to all of you tonight. What I will do is I will kind of talk a little bit about our response to autism as law enforcement officers. For me, this is a very personal topic in that my 2 youngest sons were diagnosed with autism in 2013. And as my wife and I took in this life-changing diagnosis with our 2 sons, we began to recognize that and try to learn as much as we possibly could about autism so that we could be the best advocates for our 2 sons. As I learned more about autism, I began to wonder what would happen if our two worlds collided, meaning my professional life as a law enforcement officer and then as a dad. Do we as law enforcement really understand the characteristics associated with autism, the behaviors associated with autism, and do we have the skills and resources available to de-escalate some of the situations that we may be asked to respond to? And the answer was really no. So that was kind of my mission for a long time, um, to be out and get out and train as many law enforcement officers as I could. So for the past several years, I've been very lucky to be able to present all over the country. Thus far, I've trained over 1,000 law enforcement officers across the country, and we're starting to get into our training our brothers and sisters in red for our firefighters as well, because truthfully, what happens is they are called to the scene on these calls for service as well. So it's part of my characteristics. But training law enforcement is a critical component, but another critical component is understanding our role as parents. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth between both hats because I wear both of them, but it's understanding our role and teaching our kids what is safe, especially those with a disability. So I did put a small presentation together, so we'll go through it real quick because I know we're limited on time a little bit. If I can share the screen. Ooh. Let's see if I'll be able to do it. I won't be able to. That's fine. We can go through it. Some of the critical things that we need to understand with the characteristics of autism are this. It really affects three main areas, and that is social interaction, communication, restrictive and repetitive behaviors, and difficulty adjusting to change. Well, that becomes a very difficult thing when you think about what we do as law enforcement professionals is we utilize social interaction and communication to be able to do our job. And when those areas are inhibited, it starts to become a little bit of a dilemma. And again, the critical component is, again, trying to recognize those characteristics associated with autism.
Hey,
so
Sergeant Bias,
we
sorry to
know
interrupt you,
going
but you can
forward.
share your screen now.
Awesome. Thank you very much. There it is. There we go. All right. So I will share this letter. And this letter came into my department several years ago, and it was from a concerned parent who lived in Addison. And in summary, really the email said that he had some concerns about how we would interact with his son if we were called to assist him if his son was having some problem behaviors. And he was really concerned of how our response would be as law enforcement. And switching gears a little bit as a father, I had my own concerns about my own agency where I live. If I called them for assistance, would they understand my son's characteristics and behaviors and have the skills and ability and resources available to de-escalate that situation? And truthfully, I wasn't really sure if they would. So this is really between my personal life and this email. This is my motivation for why I have set out to on this mission to train as many law enforcement officers as I possibly could. So as we kind of mentioned, there's three major impairments associated with autism. And it's lack of social interaction skills, behavior, which is restrictive and repetitive behaviors, and in communication, it's difficulty in receptive and expressive language. And receptive language is how we receive messages, and expressive is how we relay them. Okay. All individuals with autism, regardless of level of functioning, will have disabilities in these areas. These difficulties in these areas can lead to significant misunderstandings during an emergency situation where we may respond as first responders, whether it be law enforcement and or firefighter personnel. Okay. Critical component in what we talk about, especially with law enforcement, is that every behavior has a function. And I don't want to get too much of a psychology course here a little bit, but there are really four main areas or four main functions of behavior. And it's to acquire something you want. So our wants, our needs, okay? To escape an unpleasant situation, to meet a physical or sensory need, and to meet a social need, meaning getting attention. Okay, what's critical and what we'll talk about most importantly, this is really to escape an unpleasant situation and meet a physical or sensory need. Those are the two main areas that we're going to focus on tonight. Okay, a critical new statistic that we really need to talk about too is that autism in the criminal justice system. Research indicates that it's only about 1% of the population has an autism diagnosis. Okay, but they're also 7 times more likely to have contact with us as law enforcement. And that is really because of those restrictive and repetitive behaviors, that alternate sense of personal modesty, that lack of sense of danger, are all things that drive those interactions with us in law enforcement. Another critical component for us to understand as parents is that victimization rates are 10 times higher with a child with a disability than they are for a neurotypical child. So these are critical components that we have to understand as law enforcement, kind of looking at it as both sides of this fence. Okay. With autism as age, my sons are 11. My two youngest sons with autism are 11 and 9. So they're still relatively young. But as children start to grow, and this is really geared to our families that have older children that may be on the autism spectrum, as they grow older, the attitudes start to change a little bit, where that unusual behaviors shift from acceptance to kind of suspicion. So that aggressive behavior that sometimes we see with children with autism now becomes a battery. Okay? That invasion of personal space now becomes stalking. Okay, pocketing your preferred items with a young child is, again, a little more acceptable, but now it becomes a theft as they become adults. And in playing in parks, and especially with autism, it's considered an invisible disability, meaning there are no outward physical characteristics. So when you see an adult playing in a park, but they may have the mindset of that of an 8-year-old, but they have the body and they look like an adult male, the suspicion grows that they are a pedophile. So it's really critical for us to understand is as autism children grows into adults, that level of acceptance changes a lot for our kids as they grow older. Okay. Some of the other difficulties with autism are difficulty assessing relative danger, and it's a lack of sense of danger. So in some instances, we know that children and adults with autism have very restrictive interests. So it may be trains, it may be water, it may be a lot of different things that on the surface may not seem like a danger because we know that standing on train tracks is a danger. Going into a body of water when you can't swim is a dangerous situation. But for our kids, they don't have that sense of danger, which is why we have those interactions with us as law enforcement. There's also a low tolerance for frustration, fear, anxiety, and sadness. And they may lose control because of this and may not be able to engage in advanced thinking of thinking of consequences. Consequences are one of those things that is an area that's inhibited with autism as well. About 40% of the population with autism will be nonverbal, meaning that they may not be able to communicate their needs or wants. And that leads to a lot of frustration because think about it. When we want or need something, we're easily able to communicate. But if you don't have that ability, how frustrating it is to not be able to even address your basic human needs. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired, I'm hot, I'm cold. So it's because of this, they may resort to these dangerous strategies. So could be confrontational language or threatening language, withdrawal or wandering, advance, avoidance, or fleeing. It could even lead to a self-injurious behavior, meaning head banging, hitting themselves in the face, things like that, because of that frustration. And we start to look past, especially for us as law enforcement, we look past that, not to take these behaviors personal and realize that it's the disability that's causing the behavior and not that individual. We start to develop some more patience and now are better, more capable of interacting with this individual to de-escalate that given situation. Okay. Some things to consider as family members with children with special needs in the home. So again, not understanding that sense of danger. So kitchen ovens, stoves, knives, sharp objects, second story windows, chemicals, cleaning supplies, they may not have that sense of danger. Okay. Strangers at the front door or on the phone or on the internet. Social media and internet safety is a critical thing, especially for older kids with special needs, because they don't understand the dangers associated with the internet, electricity, electronics, unaware of germs or unhygienic practices, and then the inability to communicate with pain or fear or illness. All things we have to address as parents with children with special needs. And this is a lot of these issues are where we become involved as first responders. Okay. Some issues to think about in the car, windows and doors. Even as boys grow older, we still have our child locks on our back doors because, again, they may have a situation in the car where they're very overwhelmed, and may try to escape even out of a car that's moving. Again, it's that impaired sense of danger. Again, seatbelts are a critical thing. And generally, as parents driving with children with special needs, if there is an incident, guess what happens? It generally becomes an impact for us. It's distracted driving. Okay. So you're focusing on the behaviors in the back of the car and not really paying attention to the road. Parking lots are a danger. And again, in a sensory situation, especially like my youngest son, his wandering or elopement is geared around his sensory needs. So if he becomes overwhelmed, he will just run through a parking lot into a street. Again, that impaired sense of danger that we talked about. During a traffic crash that we may investigate as law enforcement, um, it's complete and total sensory overload. So they may have a meltdown in the car. They may not be able to articulate that they have a disability. The parents may be incapacitated. So how do we get this information to our first responders that our children have a disability? We'll talk about some of those resources in a second. Okay. Weather-related things, poor understanding of outdoor conditions, temperature, appropriate attire. We have this especially with wandering incidents where we know bodies of water are critical that we have to check as first responders. But again, understanding, are they dressed appropriate for the weather during a wandering event? Are they wearing the right clothing? Okay. Do they understand it's negative 60 degrees with a wind chill? May not. This may be intensified in terms of loud sounds or flashing lights. So tornado sirens are a difficult thing in my house. They are complete and total sensory overload for my boys. Behavior-related schedule changes due to inclement weather. So we know our kids thrive on routine and schedules. So, but due to weather, especially in the Chicagoland area, we know that it's unpredictable. So this may throw these kids off because of a deviation where we have a snow day where you're not able to make it to school. A critical thing to understand is that during these wandering events, there is a tendency to seek small, cramped, or limited size spaces. That's making our search that much more difficult as first responders. In the event of fire or smoke alarms and fire drills in my house are a very difficult thing. I've been in school as well, and it's complete and total sensory overload. Loud flashing lights. Again, poor planning, and it's getting your kids accustomed to fire safety a little bit. And there's a lot of resources out there, but there are some smoke detectors that, as opposed to a stereotypical or traditional smoke detector, it is the parent's voice that is recorded. So in an event of a fire in your home, it is your voice telling the kids to leave, as opposed to the typical smoke detector that we have in place. During that, they may desire to seek out safe places. So maybe a closet, enclosed space. So we tell our firefighters is during these situations, understanding in a fire scene at residence, seek those enclosed spaces, communicate with the parents to find out their favorite spots to go if we had to look for them within the house. And obviously there's that communication impairment again, is the inability to verbalize certain things. And there's always this fear or resistance to us being in uniform, whether it's law enforcement or firefighters. And again, this is where we can do our part as parents, is we want our first responders to be seen as authority figures, but we also want them to see them as people they can approach and that we're there to help. And this is a critical component for our job as parents of children with special needs, is relaying that information to our children that firefighters, police officers are there to help. A great way for parents to develop safety routines for their kids at home is breaking each routine down into smaller, easy to follow, repeatable steps. Each step should be a visual, both written and both. Depending, both of my sons are very visual learners. So they do much better with visuals and developing routines or safety plans. Teach basic steps first. Include more complex variables as you progress through your safety planning in your own home. Practice increasing real life scenarios and settings. Again, my kids hold a frame of reference. So once they have a visual or a social story or a setting, it kind of stays in their little file folder, and they were able to pull that information during a given situation. So the more we are able to increase those real life scenarios and settings, the more our kids will be apt to handle a stressful or an emergency situation. And then reinforce success. Verbal praise and positive reinforcement is a strong motivator for our kids with disabilities. So even simple phrases as "great job listening," "great job following the rules," are highly reinforcing. So reinforce success when you have it. Social narratives, and again, we talked about social stories, but you can write your own, but I'm going to save you the trouble as a parent. There's a tremendous resource. This is the website at the bottom of the PowerPoint. It's paautism.org. And they have hundreds of social stories available at no cost to families and to first responders. And they're pretty much appropriate to just about every setting you could possibly think of, whether it's fire safety, when to call 911, interactions with law enforcement, interaction with firefighters. And we'll talk about a little bit is that victimization part of it with our kids with disabilities. It even has social stories geared towards what's good touching and bad touching, which private parts, because we know there's that sense of personal modesty. The website is there. Again, all these resources are free, and it's a tremendous resource for us as law enforcement, but also as parents as well. And a critical component of us as parents teaching our kids about safety is understanding boundaries. Okay. And we kind of use this a little bit as our relationship boundaries of what's appropriate and who you talk to and who you don't and who you get closer to and things like that. Okay. So purple is our area that is me as an individual. Then your blue, your next closest ring is your family. And your green is your friends. Then yellow is acquaintances. Orange would be community helpers, and red would be strangers. So we're limiting interaction. Okay. So we're as family members or loved ones, do we think first responders should fit into this category? It's a critical component that you have to think about. Okay. Again, we're kind of seen as community helpers, and that's great. But as law enforcement professionals, we want to build a better relationship with our special needs community. We want to be more than just, we want to be friends or acquaintances. We want our kids to feel comfortable with us as first responders. And it's a critical component because seeing from both sides of this, there's some apprehensiveness to contact first responders in an emergency situation for the lack of understanding. That is a barrier that we as law enforcement professionals are trying to break within each of our agencies, statewide and even nationwide. Okay. So again, it's where you want to fit in, but we want to build that relationship so we fit in that yellow or green area with all of our kids with special needs. Okay. Some things to consider and programmings that are out there. My agency in Addison Police Department, we partner with Medical Alert, and Medical Alert has a free program. It's called LEAP. It's Law Enforcement Agency Portal is the acronym. It's a free program, but what you do is you register your loved one with the special needs, and they will issue a identification bracelet at no cost. It has their identifiers, and you can kind of customize the bracelets as much as you want, but it also has a 1-800 number. So in a situation where they may wander, first responders can call that 1-800 number, get in contact with Medical Alert, and through that identification number that is unique to that individual, they can help us reunify loved ones that may not be able to communicate. This is great for children with autism, other disabilities, but even our seniors that may be suffering from the onset of Alzheimer's or dementia. My boys will not wear the bracelet due to their sensory issues. So Medical Alert thought ahead of this and issued shoe tags. So they actually go on the shoelaces of their shoes. Both of my sons are enrolled in this program. For our older teens and adults that may be out, have more interaction outside of the house, we started providing autism information cards, and they're just a card that can easily be turned over to law enforcement or a first responder that identifies their disability without them actually having to say or talk about their disability. It has emergency contact information, some of their triggers, de-escalation strategies, so they can easily disclose this to a first responder, whether it's law enforcement or firefighter personnel, and it can disclose their disability. And we'll talk about this a lot, but it's critical for us as law enforcement to have as much information going into a particular call for service that we can get. It's resources like this that allow us to understand that there's a disability and shift gears on how we're going to handle a given situation. The next program is called the Premise Alert Program, and it is the law in Illinois. Each agency or dispatch center should have a Premise Alert Program. And in essence, what it is the Special Needs Registry. So you would register your loved ones with your local agency. And then when you call 911 or call the non-emergency number, an alert would come up when you called, and it would notify the dispatchers and then in turn the officers that there is a premise alert at that residence, indicating they have a loved one with a disability, whether it's Alzheimer's, autism, or any other associated disabilities. Again, that information that we get as law enforcement is critical. I will tell you this from my own personal experiences. My own two sons are registered in the Special Needs Registry in where we live and enrolled in a premise alert program for my local community. Smart My One is another great resource. And all it really is a premise alert program, but it's now issued countywide. So in DuPage County, it is a countywide resource as well. A tip for parents, and some parents do this, and I would advise against this, but some parents will put their children's names on in their backpacks or on their clothing on the outside of that. The problem with that is now an individual or a stranger can clearly identify your child and call them by name. Especially with kids with disabilities, just in that is enough to be like, well, they know me. They must be friends. Um, our kids with disabilities are easily manipulated and can easily have a difficult time indicating that they're being manipulated or recognizing deceitful behavior. So I encourage parents to not put your children's clothing names on the outside of their clothing or on the outside of their backpacks. If you want to have it somewhere inside, that's different, but please don't do it on the outside of their backpacks. Okay. Some of the resources that we offer for families. Again, we talked about our special needs registry, but we also provided our families with a 911 script. And we know in a situation where a loved one has wandered off, the emotion is going 100 miles an hour. Okay. We're probably not thinking very clearly as parents. So we created a 911 script for wandering events with our kids with disabilities. And really what it is, it's filling in the blanks of critical information that we would need as first responders. So all you would do is if you call 911 in an emergency situation, you would read off of this script, and it provides us the information that's critical for us to know without you really having to think about it because you're just reading off of this script. I will tell you from my own experiences with my own two sons, when we had to call 911, my wife was frantic, and it was critical information that she forgot to relay to the responding agency, to the responding officers. We also offer a neighborhood letter, and this is really the choice of families. And it's really letting your neighbors know that you have a loved one with a disability. So if they're out unattended or alone, the initial phone calls are to their parents or loved ones. The next will be to 911. Again, it's just letting your neighbors know. It's just an extra set of eyes. Even the most diligent parents are going to have instances where the kids will wander off. It has happened in my house where we're pretty diligent with our boys, but guess what? Even the most diligent parent is going to have an occasional slip up. So we also understand it as first responders as well. Another thing is autism identifiers. And again, we're going back to that information component that we talk about on having our loved ones disclose they have a disability, but if they can't, how do we get that information out? And it's really through, in my agency, what we do is we offer our families window clings. So they put them on their cars or put them in their houses so that when we arrive as law enforcement, we can see those window clings and recognize that they have a loved one with a disability. Again, getting that information to us is critical. And then for all of our families, especially in critical and wandering events with our loved ones with that, we follow up with each of our families and we create a safety plan. And it may be resources that we have or different things that we haven't explored that may be beneficial for that family. Typically on those safety plans, it's usually me who follows up with our families, but we do have some of our CIT officers take the lead in working with these families. We had a family a few years ago with a young man with autism. He was nonverbal, and he was almost on a weekly basis wandering from his home. We worked with that family to put some resources in place. And an outside resource that we utilize, we called the Ring doorbells and explained to them the situation. And Ring mailed us an entire kit for the family with door chimes, outdoor cameras, things like that. So the next time we had him wander, we had an idea of what he was wearing, where he was going, and how much time it elapsed before he walked out the door. And working with that family, we have not had a wandering event with him since, and that was 3 years ago. He's now 16. So again, working with those special needs families. Okay, so kind of in closure, law enforcement officers can enhance their safety and that of the public and the people that we serve by doing a couple simple things. And it's really recognizing the behavior, signs, and characteristics of autism, practice tolerance, patience, and communication skills, and follow procedures to ensure the safety protocol and cooperation of those individuals with autism. I leave every presentation with this, and whoever I'm talking to, I leave it with this. I say, maybe not today, but maybe not tomorrow, but somebody on this presentation today may have contact with my two sons. I want to make sure that everybody has the most critical information and the best strategies out there to serve our special needs population. So they are really my motivating factor for it. And that is why I do what I do. So I thank you for your time. I know I'm a couple minutes over and I apologize, but it's a lot of information to get in. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
So let's just open it up. You can type in your questions in the Q&A prompt at the bottom of your screen. We'll just take a minute or two to see if anyone has any questions directly. Then we'll move on to our next guest. Thank you, Sergeant Baez.
Thank you. My contact information is up here, so if there's any resources or anything that people would like to see, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am a midnight guy. I'm a midnight sergeant, so if I email you back at 3 a.m., don't take it personal. That is midday for me. So.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions come through. If you think of something else, you can contact Sergeant Baez directly, or you can go through me. Same goes for any of those resources that might interest you. And also remember that we offer safe River Forest ID bracelets as well, which is a similar program to what he spoke of. All right, Sergeant Baez, can we have the screen share back, please? And thank you very much. So just one last thing on this subject. One thing that we learned about in my crisis intervention class with Sergeant Baez was about sensory kits. And the sensory kit has been designed, this Keep Calm sensory kit has been designed in collaboration with police and EMTs to help special needs populations cope with their emotions, self-regulate, manage stress, and help with the restlessness during an emergency. Each tool is in the Keep Calm sensory kit was hand-selected, tested, and chosen by adults and children living with various mental health disorders. So happy to announce that in working with Sergeant Baez and the nice people at KeepCalmToolkit.com, we've purchased these toolkits for all of our frontline squads and are actively looking for ways to equip our officers to handle a variety of situations. So some things that you can do in that realm is you can spread the word about these kits. So if everyone knows about them, you can donate to this organization or others like it to help provide funds for other departments to get these kits as well. So we're happy to have those. All right, our next guest presenter is Ricky Swartz from River Edge Hospital. Ricky, thank you so much for your patience here. Our next guest is a seasoned drug abuse counselor and community liaison for River Edge Hospital. Ricky serves on a number of multidisciplinary teams with me, including the Opioid Task Force and the Youth Network Council. And Ricky's here to talk about some of the valuable resources and services that are available through River Edge Hospital to our area. We'll turn it over to you, Ricky.
Thank you. And can I get into screen sharing here? I'd like to.
Yep, should be available.
Okay. So can everyone see that? Can you see the website that I have up here?
Not yet. Click the green arrow at the bottom and then choose which screen you want to share and then click share. There we go. We got it.
Out of here?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. So yeah, I'm Ricky Schwartz, and I am a community liaison at River Edge Hospital. And resources, you know, I'm here to talk about River Edge Hospital as a resource. River Edge, by the way, is in the backyard here. We're located at 8311 Roosevelt Road. It's actually the largest behavioral health hospital in the state. River Edge Hospital is a 210-bed freestanding psych facility. And when I talk about River Edge Hospital, so many people tell me, oh, you know, I've driven by that building so many times and I never knew what it was. So it is a center of treatment, and it has been around since 1963. There are 9 specialty units within the hospital. And everyone is touched by mental health and mental illness. And at one point in our lives, I come from a background of family members with mental health issues and a lot of life experience with this mental health and mental health issues. So I want you to know that we're here for you and that our goal in the community is to be of service, and we have created programs within the hospital to be of service. And if anybody has any questions or needs, they should really reach out. And we're actually a publicly part of a publicly held company, so we have resources and we have trainings, and there's so much going on in the hospital. Our leadership, Carrie Carlock is the CEO of the hospital and has been for quite some time, is a very nimble thinker and is able to react to situations very, very quickly as they occur. For example, with COVID, we never missed a beat. We were able to service the community. We were able to service our patients. We were able to service people who had questions. We had more phone calls last year, March, than we have experienced in years. And the questions were, are you open? Are you working? Are you able to satisfy the needs of the community? And the answer to all of it was yes. So really, it's a tribute to how we see mental illness, how we treat mental health as a trauma-informed facility. And what that means is that everybody in the hospital realizes the extent of mental health and is able to react in a constructive manner to mental health and is able to refer to resources if we cannot do things. And we really want to let you know that we can do a lot of the basics that people get confused about. What is it? I'm going to go just kind of through the site quickly because the website is all inclusive and it's a fabulous website. And it's a resource for you. And I'm going to go through things. So I'm just going to play a quick video here for what we do for our kids.
As parents and caregivers, we all want better health for our children. But for children and teens struggling with depression or other mental health issues, you may not know where to turn for help. Luckily, help and hope are closer than you think. As a true community partner, our trained staff provides compassion, specialty care, and the ability to serve your family remotely in the safety of your home through our virtual telehealth services. Better days are ahead. River Edge Hospital. We are River Edge. We are compassion.
So you're going to see the phone number appear here many times, and I urge you, to write it down and have it kind of in your back pocket. And I'm just going to kind of, again, go briefly through things. So we have a new feature on the site here where, I'm sorry, I'm doing this, it can get a little dizzying, but I want you to know that we have over 350 employees in the hospital, and we are actually hiring. So if people are looking for work for nurses or for entry-level positions in the mental health industry, please give us a call for that. But we have an online form here. So if somebody is curious, if somebody needs to get some help and they don't want to call or they're not comfortable calling, or there's a lot of stigma in mental health. There's a lot of stigma walking into a mental health facility. Are people going to look at me funny? Am I going to be labeled as a sick person? Am I going to lose my friends? What is my relationship in the community? And all of these types of questions come in. So there's a form on here, and I'm going to get to it here momentarily, where you just fill out 3 questions and somebody will get back to you within 24 hours during the week, 48 hours on the weekends. By the way, we are 24/7. So anytime somebody has a need, somebody is going to answer a phone. And so some of the services that we offer. We take kids as young as 4 years old. So if somebody is exhibiting signs and symptoms of mental health, you can call us, you can ask questions, you can find out, you can come to our site and find out what things are available. But again, we are a resource in the community for all ages. So children and adolescents. We have a comprehensive treatment facility. So people can come in and they might need stabilization. Our average length of stay in the hospital for inpatient is about 9 days. We can get people stabilized psychiatrically, and then we can move them into outpatient services, or we can refer them to outpatient services in the community, whatever is easiest for them. We have access to telehealth. So they can be on Zoom if they can't be comfortable in groups, or now they can even have mental health assessments via Zoom. There's psychiatry available. There is a bit of a wait, but much less than in the general community. So if somebody needs psychiatric evaluations, if they need medication management, if they can't get in to see a psychiatrist, we can bring them into the fold. The hospital, we can offer them psychiatric medication management, and we can then refer them either to one of our programs or programs within the community. So again, inpatient programs, outpatient programs, we have partial hospitalization programs where kids actually are getting school credit, so they won't be falling apart behind school. And we work with the schools for reentry so that the parents, the social workers know what the medication is, where the child has been, what the catch-up is, and a lot of communication between our education departments and the community. So we also have couple of programs for our adolescents. So for adolescents, we have separate units for our males and females. So we don't want them together. We don't want them treatment together. We don't want them seeing each other. We differ from other hospitals in that way. Some hospitals, our sister hospital, Streamwood, for example, has a protocol for adolescents where they will group them together based on diagnosis. We have a different thing. So again, depending on the needs of the child and the family, we can move them to a place that's going to be best for them. So again, I just kind of want to go quickly through things. And I want to show you our services, some of the videos that we have, because it answers a lot of questions. Adults. So treat a myriad of symptoms for adults. So we have a co-occurring unit in the hospital. So if somebody is struggling with a mental health issue and they need pediatric stabilization, and they're also struggling with substance use, we can stabilize them with psychiatric issues and then move them into their treatment for substance. And that can be with outpatient groups, that can be in another facility. But again, we want to continue, and we want to keep people in a fold of wellness, and River Edge is able to provide those services to our adults. We also have an intensive treatment. So as police officers might be confronted with people who are in the midst of a psychotic episode or a schizophrenic episode, we have a unit designated for that. So if you need to bring somebody into the hospital, it's a very simple process. It's a front door process. You come right to the front door of the hospital and you bring in and you get an assessment there. Of course, we prefer people call us and we have an appointment and be seen within 24 hours. However, not always possible. So again, we are able to be nimble with our admissions process. And at times, people can come in from other hospitals. I mean, most of our admissions come in from other hospitals, and we can make a admission call, relatively quickly. So again, we can get people into treatment as quickly as possible without having them languish in emergency departments or in uncertain areas. So it's important to ask questions. It's important to know that there's our resources in our backyard. We have a myriad of treatment modalities. I'm not going to get into them right now, but to know that it's not a cookie cutter type of thing. And by the way, River Edge, my brother was in River Edge in the 70s. And River Edge was not a nice place. And I'm an older person in the community. And I often get pushback in there. Well, River Edge, what are you talking about? And let me tell you, River Edge is a model now of trauma-informed care. And many of the models and the practices and protocols that we have put in place have been modeled by the parent company across over 350 hospitals around the country, actually around the world, Ireland and UK as well. So I want you to know that it's a state-of-the-art facility right now, and it's in your backyard. So make sure you know that and make sure you're using that. We also have a residential component to our thing, and it's for young men with problem sexual behaviors. And what we have to remember is that these guys are victims of sexual abuse and ultimately perpetrators, but we have a rehabilitation program. And it's very intense. It's an 18-month program, and the process to get into this is a little bit different, but we can handle that. We also have a unit in the hospital for people struggling with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We're the only ones in the state, unfortunately, that have this unit. So it's difficult. And we have a psychiatrist that's been on that unit for many, many years, and he was a passionate and compassionate guy. I'm telling you, it's amazing to watch how he relates to the population. Many are nonverbal, and it's difficult to communicate. So again, we get this unit in the hospital as well. And we have a general unit for people who are struggling with anxiety and depression, and really have been in mental health systems for a good part of their lives. And again, we're able to stabilize and move people into other avenues of wellness and care. We have a myriad of support groups that go on in the hospital. We have postdoc interns in the hospital who are doing research. We also have nurses that come in and learn psychiatric care so that they're not strangers to mental health and mental illness. Okay, and of course, our telehealth services. Admissions process is quite simple, not necessary to go into, but again, if you come to our site, many of the things are available, basic things. What do you bring? What do you do? What can't you bring? What are visiting hours? How do I talk to my loved ones? Where, the what, the where's, the how, and the when. What does it cost? How is it insurance covered? By the way, we take just about everything. So that's generally not our issue. We also have our schedules on the site. And if you need records for continuation, of course, that is available. And people that take care of all of that stuff. And I am the liaison, by the way, in the community. So if you are uncertain about anything, what is the process? If you're a police officer, a community member, I'm your person. So you need to have a person that knows and understands. We're the largest behavioral health hospital. These systems are difficult to navigate. And they're often frustrating and they're intimidating, especially when people are in crisis, your loved one is in crisis, or you're dealing with somebody in crisis. So we are a resource in the community for you. So I want to show you, okay, I know I got to hustle it up. So on the website, there are many videos about what is mindfulness, what is mental health. There's a quick list over here. It's really cool to understand, to start listening, and they're quick. What is it? What does it mean? What does it look like? What is a panic attack? What is wellness? And how do I talk about suicide? What is the language around that? By the way, talking about suicide doesn't create suicidal ideation. So if you're seeing changes in people's behavior, it's very intimidating to try to think, how do I say to my partner? How do I say to my loved ones? Are you thinking of harming yourself? Do you have means to harm yourself? And to be able to be there in that moment. There are some videos here that can kind of guide you, give you some insight. What is ideation? So there's many here. By the way, all of this is free. You can use it. You can share it. You can, share it with your families and with your coworkers. And we urge you to do it. We urge you to do it. And again, we have other things going on. We have workshops. We work a lot with schools in the area. So again, if you're looking for information, if you're looking for treatment, if you're looking for a resource, even if we're not the place for you, we will be able to guide you in a place. And without resources, really, our mental health systems fall flat because we can recognize, say we know, but we don't know where to go from there. So River Edge can help with that, and we are in your backyard. So I'll put my contact information in the chat, and thank you, Officer Ransom, for inviting me here. I appreciate the opportunity to work with the community.
Thanks so much, Rick. Again, we'll leave it open just for a minute. Any Q&A questions come in. We'll also have time at the end of the presentation. I don't know if Rick is available to stick around. If not, you can get a hold of him through me or through River Edge, of course. And like Rick said, this is right in our backyard, another resource for us and something that we're, blessed to have. So take advantage of it. If you see something that can help you or help a loved one or a friend. Okay, moving on. A few community updates briefly. Last week was National Prescription Take Back Day. It was hosted through the townships and in partner with Positive Youth Development. It is unwise to leave unused prescriptions around in your medicine cabinets. It's also unsafe to toss or flush them. So if you miss this event, you can always turn in expired or unwanted prescriptions at the basement of Village Hall, where we have a receptacle through Cook County Sheriff's Prescription Drug Take Back Program. So that's always available at 400 Park. This month, members of our community organized the first River Forest Community Bike Exchange event, where bikes were traded, donated, and purchased with added services of free tune-ups, bicycle registration, and bicycle registration through our police department. Several dozens of bikes were exchanged, with the rest being donated to Working Bikes, which will be shipped to El Salvador at the end of this month. So kudos to our organizers, and the exchange was a big hit, and I can see it becoming an annual event. This month we also had a fraud and scams presentation. Our crime prevention department partnered with a retired member of the United States Security Exchange Commission in order to talk about fraud and scams with a variety of topics, including phone and mail scams, home repair fraud, and roost burglaries. If you missed this, we will be having another presentation later this year. Also hope to make a recorded presentation available online. And that was hosted by the River Forest Library, so thank you to them. For all these events, remember that you can go to our village website, vrf.us, click up at the top to become notified for alerts for upcoming events. Now moving on, I will have Detective Sergeant Justin Labriola come to talk about crime trends and statistics.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Actually, before I go ahead and start talking about crime statistics, I'm actually going to get into motor vehicle accidents that have been reported this year within 2021 so far, between January and March so far this year. Just looking at some of the graphs that we have here. As you can see, most of our accidents occur like you would actually think that they would during our rush hour traffic, anywhere between 3 o'clock and about 7 p.m. These are both our non-injury accidents as well as our injury and hit-and-run accidents. Again, you can see that this is displayed by these graphs as well as this bar graph here, that most of the accidents, as you would assume, occur Wednesday throughout the course of the weekend, and it's least likely to an accident will occur during the Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday days. If you wonder why we actually patrol in certain areas that we do, a lot of times you'll see some of our squad cars on Chicago Avenue is because we are responsive to some of the hit and run accidents, some of the injury accidents. These graphs we didn't just prepare today. We have an analyst that prepares these monthly. We analyze those. They're put out to each shift. Each shift appropriately responds to the locations where accidents are most likely to occur or where they have occurred. That is obviously to curb the amount of accidents that occur. So we are trying to be both proactive and reactive to certain times and certain dates and certain locations within the village. This is just a secondary screen of the non-injury accidents that have occurred throughout the village between January and March. Going on to some crime statistics, fortunately here in River Forest, we have not experienced a high level of crime. As you can see, just this graph here is going to go ahead and depict just a few incidents that we've actually had so far this year. You can see that we've been successful in our arrest rates with some of the Part 1 offenses that have occurred, including a vehicular hijacking that occurred up at the Circle K or Shell gas station up at Harlem and North Avenue. That offender, a young 15-year-old male juvenile, was arrested. Within a couple of days, the vehicle was recovered, as well as an incident that occurred at the Starbucks located at 7201 Lake Street. That offender was taken into custody by our patrol shift almost immediately after the incident took place. There is one incident that occurred in the middle of town, was a vehicle burglary. That incident there, again, I believe it was an unlocked door, so remember to keep your doors locked. It is the summer months. Those of you who have lived in town for a number of years, you know that the number of bike thefts, the number of burglaries do increase during the summer months. Make sure that you're leaving your doors locked on your vehicles, your garages. Keep your car keys inside of your house, not inside of your car. That will go ahead and prevent your vehicle from being broken into, your cars being taken. Again, watch out for your neighbors. A lot of us are going to be vacationing over the summer. So if you do see any suspicious activity, maybe at your neighbor's house, just make sure you contact us. You could stay anonymous. It could be the non-emergency number. Call 911. Again, if your neighbors aren't home, then we look out for one another. So if you see something, say something, and hopefully we have a nice, quiet, and safe summer. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, or if you have them, I'll be more than happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective Sergeant. Thank you. Our last presentation tonight before we open up for Q&A will be just talking about the recent criminal justice reform legislation package, which was signed into law in February by Governor Pritzker. And I will have Patrol Commander Jim Greenwood here to talk about that.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Commander James Greenwood. I'm the Patrol Commander with the River Forest Police Department. As Officer Rance mentioned, Governor Pritzker signed this law into law on February 22nd, 2021. It is Public Act 101-062, and its acronym is SAFE-T Act. And the SAFE-T stands for Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act. Some of the highlights of the legislation package are included here. It's a brief summary. There's, I think the text is approximately 600 pages of the law itself. So this is definitely not the whole package, but this is a good summary of it. Body-worn cameras for all officers. There is a varying degree depending on the size and population of the community that's served by that law enforcement agency. But all law enforcement agencies will be mandated to have body-worn cameras by 2025. And for River Forest, the size of our department, we would be in that last group of 2025 where it's mandated. There's also a section about expanded training requirements for law enforcement officers. This goes into effect July 1st, 2021. We're working closely with our training sergeant and department, and working closely with Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board, and with some of our training partners, such as the Northeast Multi-Regional Training Unit and others, just to make sure that we meet those mandates and those requirements as we have been over the existence of the department and with these partners. There are also expanded reporting requirements to the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, short is ILETSB, and those go into effect July 1st. The Illinois Secretary of State's office will rescind suspensions and cancellations of driver's license that were based on the failure to pay fines or tickets. So there will no longer be suspensions or cancellations for licenses for unpaid tickets, and that will be effective July 1st, 2021. Complaints against sworn officers will no longer require to be supported by a sworn affidavit or any other legal document. This is also going to affect July 1st, 2021. Police will be prohibited from requesting or receiving military surplus program equipment. That, again, is also effective July 1 of this year. All records of complaints, investigations, and adjudications of police misconduct must be retained and not destroyed. And again, that's effective July 1. The Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board will establish a process for certification and decertification of law enforcement officers effective January 1st, 2022. The abolition of monetary bail for specified offenses will go into effect January 1st, 2023. Illinois is the first state in the country to institute that as a matter of public policy. Continuing on, the General Assembly intends to establish statewide use of force standards for law enforcement agencies, and that's going to be during this spring legislative session. So we're eagerly anticipating and waiting to see what that final information is going to look like for law enforcement and for the public. The Task Force on Constitutional Rights and Remedies will further examine and propose possible changes to qualified immunity for peace officers, and that I know is still being worked on, although it's as effective here by May 1st, 2021. That's still in the legislature right now. The Illinois Attorney General allowed more oversight on allegations of violation of constitutional rights, and that again is effective July 1 of this year. At this point, I'll see if there's any questions on for the group. At this point, I don't see any, but what we will do is I'm going to turn this back over to Chief O'Shea, who can answer any questions that you have regarding the section I just presented, and if any questions for any other presenters. Thank you for your time and have a great evening.
Thank you, Commander Greenwood. What I'd like to do now is just leave a few minutes here in case any last-minute questions come in. As you already know, our topics, like the ones we heard today, and first of all, I want to thank Sergeant Baez from the Addison Police Department for his time and information tonight, and also to Ricky Schwartz from one of our partners over at River's Edge. And I do agree with his assessment, even from the time growing up in Oak Park and some of the reputation it had during the 70s is far from what it is today, and they are a model for around the country. One of the things I also want to mention is the topics we talk about that were covered tonight are driven by the community. So if you do have topics that you'd like covered, please send an email to our crime prevention officer, Ben Ransom, and he will have his contact information up again. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We never close. And so please, if you have a question, always call. If you need non-emergency assistance, call. And if you're not sure, please dial 911. In addition, we always have supervisors on the street. So if you have a question or a concern that you don't think an officer can respond to, please ask to speak with the supervisor, and they will be more than glad to kind of walk you through the processes and procedures here at the department. Not seeing any questions coming in, I'm going to turn it over to Officer Ransom for a few exit comments.
Of course, if you're viewing this video after the fact, my information will be made available. It's also on our website, but that's bransom@vrf.us. You can email me or call me directly through our non-emergency number. And I can always get you into contact with our presenters, and I can find answers for you on anything else that might come up. So if you think of questions later, feel free to chime in and contact me. In the meantime, stay alert, stay safe. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you at our next meeting, which will be in July. Take care, everyone.